Hi everybody! So, I thought I would start this live with an incredibly ridiculous hat. See? This is what happens when when I am left alone in a craft store with a hot glue gun. I just thought you guys would like to see. This is my insane garden party hat. And I have been known it does require a hat pin, so that is that's why I don't wear it that often, because my hair is pretty short for a hat pin. Anyway, hi everyone. So I'm gonna take my silly hat off now. Welcome to a Sunday live. What do I have to say? I make it just 2 minutes past the hour, so we should be beginning on our video. I have forgotten my tea, which is a tragedy, but I don't really want to pause to go get it. So I am tealess and boozeless. Although, if you don't mind waiting for a moment, I could run and get the alcohol. I did say I would be tipsy for this live, and I'm not. I'm just my normal bubbly self. Fortunately for everyone, hi everyone, look at you all citing it. It's so exciting. Amanda already has a question. She's starting us off right away, but I actually have some questions logged in already because people jumped onto the event and asked questions ahead of time to make sure. And incidentally, that is the way to make sure that I get to your questions, is if you have asked them ahead of time in the event, then I know you want me to talk about it. Sally says I should go get my tea and booze, but I don't want to leave you with nothing, and I don't really have a way to sort of leave you with the hat in my stead. Well, I could kind of flip it. I wonder if I could flip it, and then you could see me getting my tea. How about that? Why don't we try that? Hi, Starla! This is really cool. This on a Sunday. All right, there it is. That's my tea station. Woo! Here's me. I don't even know if you can still hear me or see me, but I will now make tea. Tea. It's necessary. Yes, I know I'm making it with a bag, but I don't really have time to make a pot. And I do drink bagged tea all the time. I've been given permission, everybody, to go get myself alcohol and tea. So that's what's going on. This is a very exciting live. And yes, I'm doing my tea week. I've already had like 6 cups of tea. This just shows you how freestyle these things are. And I'm having cider. Normally I drink champagne, but cider is what I've got in the fridge, so. Right. Let's flip you back. How was that? Was that exciting for everyone? Could you even hear me? Aw, look at you guys complimenting me on my outfit. Thank you. I wrote this one special because it matches the new book. So you know me. I like to wear the dress that matches the book. There's the new book. Woohoo! Ty is saying no Prosecco. No, I'm going to have cider to celebrate today. It is my backup plan because I couldn't find a tiny bottle of Prosecco, and I'm not a lush. I can't drink an entire bottle myself. So just having a little cider. Trust me, I'm a lightweight. That's enough to get me tipsy. So, hi everybody. Sorry for that brief interlude. You got to see the behind the scenes of The Office. Don't even know if you heard me, but what I said was I forgot to get my tea, so I went and got some tea, but I also got some cider because we're celebrating a book today. Today is the day that the book is launching. So, and I had some questions to get us started off. So, right. First of all, the usual, which is I want to know where you guys are watching from because it gives me this deep sense of satisfaction to know that I'm going out into all different parts of the world. So if you would leave me a little comment and just say where you're signing in from, I would love that. Please hold your questions for just a little while because I've got a few questions to get us started off with that have come in earlier, and then we'll get to whatever questions you have after that. I hope everybody is better prepared than me and already has their tea. So the very first question I have is one that I actually think a lot of people might be interested in, and it involves props. So I thought I would go ahead and do that one first. Let's see, who asked it? So, anybody who knows how to do it, if you would like to share this video as it's going with the Parasol Protectorate group, I'm sure they would really appreciate that. Not everybody knows how to come over and watch it on the page, so that would be awesome, but give it a try if you can. So, somebody asked me how book covers come into existence, and I've talked a little bit about the basics of book covers, but I haven't really talked about the particulars of the different book covers. So, ostensibly we're talking about this one today, but I thought I would start with sort of all the different ones, because I think that's the easiest. So let's begin at the beginning, shall we? So this is the first book cover I ever got. Some of you may recognize this puppy. This is, in fact, the original edition. It was a small book. It was a mass market paperback when it first came out. My first book ever was, what was it? $7.99. There it is. That was the first book. So this cover, actually, I helped to find. So this was back in the day of LiveJournal, and I spotted this image in a steampunk aestheticists forum. So a forum for ladies who love dresses, basically, and gentlemen, I suppose. And Donna shared this image, and I basically just pulled it and gave it to my publishing house and said, hey, this is the kind of idea of the cover, because they kind of didn't really have an idea what they wanted to do. And they kind of took it and ran with it. Now that's really unusual. Normally in traditional publishing, the author doesn't have any say whatsoever in their cover art. So I was really lucky that I had any say. And after that, they would sort of send me the covers and give me an idea of the color profile. I tend to get a traditional cover during the first major editing pass of a book, so that just the timing, that's how it often works out. And that way I can stick the dress that she's wearing into the book as much as possible. So I don't know if you guys care that much, but I care. I like to try and make sure that what's on the cover is in the book. So that's a revision pass thing when I do that. So yeah, so there's how a traditional cover comes into existence. Now for the next one. So then a cover like this, which is the illustrated edition cover, that is just presented to me. I mean, I have some say in it, but they had a couple of different ideas on how they wanted to do the cover, and then this was the image that they ended up with, which I actually really like. It's nice to have a couple on the cover. I don't usually have two people on the cover of my books. So, but that's obviously because this is the whole point of this edition is that it's an artist's take. So that's that one. These ones I don't have a lot of say in. Okay, then we have something like this. So this is one of my independent books. So I'm sort of responsible for the whole production of this book as well as writing it. So I chose everything. So I choose the colors but obviously what I'm trying to do with some of the elements is hearken to the earlier book. So the sort of slashes on the covers and the fonts that I choose, those are all to sort of tie back to my original stuff. So in terms of the image and how I find that, a lot of my images come from Dark Garden. So I worked for Dark Garden for years and I'm very good friends with them, and I really love their style of photography and kind of their aesthetic when they're styling their models, when they're doing photo shoots. Dark Garden is a corset vendor. And so I'm always haunting their forums and back catalog and just looking for images that might work. And so this one came up. It was for a wedding shoot that Dark Garden did, and I just really loved the emotional resonance between the two characters. And so it just spoke of Biffy and Lyle to me. So that's how I I chose that. So then what I have to do is I have to ask Dark Garden who their photographer is, because the photographer owns the rights. And then I have to reach out to the photographer and ask them if they would sell me those rights for a cover art manipulation. And sometimes it can be quite expensive for a really nice image. It can get like up into the early, like the high hundreds of dollars just to buy the photo, that if I want that photo really badly. And sometimes it can be less expensive. So that's how that one came into existence. So for something like the Sumage solution, this is Quinn. So I know the model, or I know of him. We've never met actually in person, but so this is a photographer named Evan Butterfield, and I really love his style of photography. He works almost exclusively with male models, and so I need to be doing a character with a man on the cover in order for, or doing a book with a man on the cover in order for me to use Evan. But I love working with him. He's a fantastic photographer. He's really easy to work with. He's super friendly. He knows the drill now. I have several books with his models on my on covers, so I will go and just check out what he's got. However, sometimes he just doesn't have a model that looks like the character that I want on the cover. So Quinn was perfect for Max, who's the first character, one of the main characters in the Sumage solution. So it was a perfect synergy. But Evan really didn't have a character that spoke to me as either Tank or Isaac for the Omega Objection. So for this cover, this is a stock art image. And it used to be really tough to find good stock art images of a wide range of characters, but things have gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. So I will use stock art on occasion. I don't love to, because often that image is being used by a lot of other covers, but sometimes if I'm going to do, Starla's going to do quite a bit of manipulation. Starla, incidentally, is my cover designer. Then I don't mind using stock art. So that one is stock art. This one, How to Marry, is also a stock art image. So that's how those come into existence. And then, of course, Starla takes the stock art and then manipulates it in this sort of beautiful manner to get all of these other things. So Amanda is asking if I have to pay for stock art, and the answer is no, not usually. I will if the perfect image is marked as purchase for use. There's different levels of how much you pay, but often Starla wraps it up in my cost of cover because she has accounts with different stock art vendors and things like that. So generally speaking, I don't have to, I pay for stock art only as part of the cost of the cover design. And then that brings us to this, which is the last situation that my covers are in, which is when I have books with two covers. So in the case of these guys, this is the cover art that was designed for my traditional publisher, and this is the cover art that Starla designed that goes to overseas markets. So, and you can see that they're similar in terms of color, but they have different models. And in these particular instances, I have chosen the cover model for the UK and overseas editions, and my publishing house has chosen the model for the US edition. And sometimes they ask me about the model, and so in this particular instance they did. They showed me pictures that are like model headshot pictures, and they said, which one do you think is the most like Primrose? And I liked her, and so did the other people on my team. And then this is another Dark Garden image that I liked. I just liked the pose and the sort of arrogance of her face. So, but you can see that they're different models, and I guess that's kind of an illustration of how I'm pretty, like, I describe characters the way I describe them, and I see them a certain way in my head, but it's never the case that a model is going to be exactly the way I picture that character in my head. It's just never going to be the case. Often I have a famous actor or actress who's sort of in my head when I'm writing a character, or a friend, or an acquaintance, or just like a side character actor that I saw in a movie once, or amalgam of a couple of different things in my imagination. So the cover model is never exactly how I picture them to be, but that's okay, because that's not the point. For me, the point of the cover is not to exactly show the character. The point of the cover is to sort of indicate the attitude of the character and their sort of emotional state in the book, and also to show like what kind of book it is to you. And as Starla says, the Biffy and Lyle image is particularly wonderful, but that one is probably by far my favorite models. Like these two are just so wonderful together. But like that's not exactly how I picture Biffy, and that's not exactly how I pictured Lyle in my head when I was writing them. And I did have to go in and write the fact that Lyle grows his hair out in order to match this cover. But again, like that's because what I'm going for in the cover is sort of an emotional resonance and an iconic indication of what the story is like, rather than an exact replication of a scene in the book. Like if I wanted to get a scene in a book exactly on the cover of that book, then I'd have to get an artist to do it. That would be the only, I'd have to get a drawn piece of art. That'd be the only way to really get it exactly correct. And I've never had, aside from the special edition, I've never had a drawn cover, so it doesn't really jive with, and the manga, of course, just doesn't really drive with my brand to have an artistic cover, an artist's rendering cover. And to be quite honest, they're incredibly expensive to get well done. So that was an exciting start to this live. You just gotta like read on a bazillion things about covers. But yes, I agree. As the commenters are saying, even with an illustration, it's going to be the artist's interpretation of your words. It's not going to be exactly how I pictured it in my head, and that's okay. I'm absolutely fine with that. It doesn't have to be exactly. And if you want to hear Starla, my cover art designer, chatting about covers, she is right now commenting. So and she doesn't lie. This woman, she speaks truth. And I do push her. I'm very exacting. What, you expected something else. Anyway, so that was a very long answer for a cover. And speaking of the one that we're here to discuss today, which is somewhere in this stack. Now I have book covers everywhere. This one. So, yeah, I changed my hair color. I'm not sure I'm going to keep it. So anyway, The Omega Objection is the book that we're actually celebrating out today. I think I did some calculations, and I think this is book number 25. So it is around the 25th thing that I have published since I became, and it is definitely the 25th book that I have written since I became a professional author. So 25 it is, which is kind of exciting. And what do we need to know about it? So this is Isaac and Tank's story. It is available in print. Should be out there right this moment. Fingers crossed. The print edition that you guys are getting actually has a different title color, so it's a darker turquoise, the title of the book in the print editions. If you get this one, you have a very first edition, so lucky you. There are only a few of those in existence. The ones with the darker title are a redo. I updated it slightly just because it wasn't quite legible enough for my taste, so that's it. So what you're ordering and getting now should have the darker script on it. All things being equal. Yes. So, and if you're curious about the audiobook, it is coming. Kurt is the narrator. He did the narration for the Sumage Solution, so he's narrating The Omega Objection as well. And my producer Brian tells me that he has it already, and he should be starting recording soon, probably next month. And which means with production and quality assurance and all that sort of thing, I'm hoping early in the spring is when you'll get the audiobook. So, but you know, if you're on the chirp, then I will tell you the moment it is available. So yay. Okay. I think that's the start of, so keep those questions in mind. I have a couple more that I'm going to get to first. asked previously if I can scroll through. Apparently not. Another question. So I'm afraid I didn't write down who asked it. I totally apologize, but somebody said, I've just finished How to Marry a Werewolf, and I loved every line. Thank you very much. Information about future books in the series with the London Pack. So, the Claw and Courtship series, that's this one. So it's soon in the writing roster. So the next one that I'm intending to write is actually a Delightfully Deadly book, which is one of the Finishing School spin-off books. And partly that's because and this already leaked in the Cheer Up this morning, so you probably know this, but the Finishing School girls, certain elements of them are showing up in 2 books that I have coming out next year. So they're showing up as side characters. So I was kind of delving already back into the Finishing School a little bit, and so so it'll probably be a Delightfully Deadly novella that I go to next in the novella line. After that, we'll come back to the Claw and Courtship. So probably not next year, I'm afraid, but definitely the year after. That's the plan. But I don't have a concrete idea on who is going to be next in this series. And I'm kind of waiting for that inspiration to strike. But, so you'll get a Delightfully Deadly first. Sorry, it's the way it goes. But there's some other exciting releases next year, I promise. It's a pretty fun year next year. It's my 10-year author birthday next year, so I'm pretty excited by the kind of fun stuff that's coming out because of that. Yay! So, that answers that question. Let me see, did we have any more? Oh, Ty's got a bunch. All right. How do I go about titling the book? So that's also a good question. So this one is the Sumage Solution, and then this one is the Omega Objection. So obviously yours truly really likes alliteration. I use it in a lot of my titles. One of the reasons, this is strange, but one of the reasons I moved away from single word titles like Soulless, etc. is because, first of all, those titles get used by other books a lot. So there are a lot of different Soullesses now. There's a lot of Heartlesses now. And, you know, I don't want to share my titles, I guess. So if I use more than one word, or if I use a made-up word, it's way less likely to be used by anybody else. For those of you who don't know, titles cannot be copyrighted for obvious reasons, like, nor should they be copyrighted. So anyway, so that's one of the things that comes into play when I'm thinking about titles. I like to, I like to mention or have something that is key to what occurs within the book. So with the Soulless series, there's a reason for each single word title. So there's a reason it's called Blameless, obviously, right? And there's a reason the last one is called Timeless, obviously, right? So those are kind of, so I am often playing with, if it is a single word title, like I'm still doing with Reticence and Competence and so on and so forth, it definitely ties to the behavior of the characters in the book. So Starla is asking whether I have a title before I start writing. In the case of the traditionally published books, yes. So when I'm writing books for my publishing house, like the Custard Protocol books, or the Finishing School books, or the Parasol Protectorate books, I had contract in with the titles in place. So I'll say, you know, I'm signing a contract for 2 more books in the series, and those 2 books are going to be called Heartless and Timeless, right? And then sometimes the publisher actually wants to change the title of the book. So, for example, Etiquette and Espionage was the original title, but the second one was going to be Deportment and Deceit, and I was going to be titling the Finishing School books not in alphabetical order as well. So you always knew which book was first because it would be following alphabetically in the series. So it was going to be Etiquette and Espionage, Deportment and Deceit, Manners and Mutiny, Waistcoats and Weaponry was going to be the last one. But obviously that's not what happened. So they didn't like Deportment and Deceit as a title. I can't remember why. I think maybe because deportment is a very unknown word, or possibly it's too long of a word. I'm not sure. So they axed that title entirely. So I had to like redo all of the titles. And yeah, it did slightly affect the content of the books as a result, because when Waistcoats and Weaponry became the third book in the series, that was when it became clear that it was going to be more about the boys in the series. So for those of you who don't recall titles and plots, Waistcoats and Weaponry is the one with Soap, and it's the one with Felix, and it's the one where you first meet the Duke and all those sorts of things. So yeah, so sometimes titles are changed, or I'm told that I need to rethink a title. I don't mind. I never mind any of that kind of thing. It doesn't bother me. I'm aware that it's usually a marketing choice, and it's better to play nice with marketing as a general rule. Often it is as simple as it doesn't look as good on the cover, so they want a different title because it looks better. I've always loved the finishing school titles because they can use the ampersand. That "and" is such a beautiful script, and it's so much fun to play with, and you can see, that the cover art designers really like an "and." They like that because it looks so good. I'll use it in a lot of books. So that's the titles question. When I am so the title kind of usually organically comes to me when I'm writing the self-published stuff. So if I'm writing a novella in the Parasol verse, I am borrowing something for the title from the prior books from which it is a spin-off. So for the Delightfully Deadly series, the series has an alliterative name because it comes out of the finishing school, and the titles will as well. So the titles will always be 2-word titles for Delightfully Deadly, just as they were in the finishing school. So it's Poison or Protect, and it'll go on from there. The other thing I'm doing with the Delightfully Deadly books is the title of the book is going to match the main character's first name. So it's Precious Book, so it's Poison or Protect, so P, right? So for Agatha's book, it will be 2 A words. For Dimity's book, it will be 2 D words, right? So that's just because I'm terribly, terribly clever with myself. And I like to be rule bound. I like to have guidelines. I like to play with it so that once you start getting the tricks, and of course it's easier to get the tricks that I'm up to if you're paying attention to if I'm faster at writing a bunch of books in the series. So this will make more sense as more books come out in the different novella lines. But that should make it really easy for you to know whose book you're picking up. So if you can't remember the title itself, you should at least be able to remember who the main character was for that book, and then you'd be like, oh, I want to read Precious Book, that's the P one, right? I want to read Dimity's book, that's the D one. That's my hope anyway, is to try and make it easier. I'm always trying to make it easier on you guys in terms of recognition and pulling something off a shelf or pulling something up on your Kindle. So that's the idea with the Delightfully Deadly books. The San Andreas books, it mentions the role of a character in the book. So Sumage, Omega, Enforcer is the last one. So, and then it's alliterative because I like alliteration. The Claw and Courtship. Okay, so the Claw and Courtship books are all going to be how-to books because each chapter header is a lesson. So the next Claw and Courtship book will be another how-to. So it'll probably be How to Woo a Werewolf, I think. We'll see who the main character is. So that one was How to Marry. Next one will be How to Woo, so on and so forth. That'll be slightly confusing for you. Sorry. But the covers will be nice and bright and different colors. So you'll be able to say, Gail, which is the blue one, right? Gail, which is the super pink one? That's this one. Other title things. So the Custard Protocol titles all indicate the emotional cohesion of the characters in question. So Reticence is called Reticence because it is Percys' book, and he's kind of reticent about everything, life, except for his own intellect, but life and emotions. And so with the Custard Protocol, I'm sort of playing with the idea that the the strength of a character is also their failing, and how do you meld that, and how do you match that? Like Primrose is, to an extent, in the book Competence, she is overly competent, and it impacts her negatively because she can't kind of accept her own personal identity because it's all wrapped up in being competent and being the like perfect icon of a Victorian woman, which means husband and children. And so like her both achievement as a person, Primrose, is her competency, but then but that's also kind of negatively impacting her personal journey and her happiness. And the same thing with Reticence, with the final book, and Percy. So he's very reticent about certain things, his own emotional acumen, connecting with other people. That's also saved him and made him an incredible intellect and all of these things. But that reserve is something that he's going to have to kind of conquer in himself. So yeah, titles, I think a lot about titles, and they obviously have a lot to do with the books, and I have a lot of fun with it. And so, yeah, there's the titles. Ties has another question, which is, oh, how do I give a series title? So series titles are actually more difficult for me. It took a whole kind of committee of my best girlfriends to come up with the Parasol Protectorate, because I didn't think I was writing a series when I wrote Soulless, and then the publishing house wanted a series, so I had to come up with a series name. And so that was a big brainstorm with my best girlfriends when we came up with the Parasol Protectorate. And so the Custard Protocol was a big brainstorm with me and my team. I can't remember. I think I wanted something alliterative, probably. And I can't remember how we ended up with the Custard Protocol, but for me, the series name does have to be incredibly unique to kind of me. The series name has to really represent the kind of books I write, even more than the title does. So Reticence is kind of a title that you could see used for many different kinds of books, including nonfiction. But the Custard Protocol is Gail. That just like screams the Parasol verse, right? It is a sort of serious, rule-bound thing, protocols, and then a ridiculous thing, Custard. So the series names are are almost more important to me, because they have to really have to represent something that's very quintessential. So Claw and Courtship represents both the werewolfness and the sort of Victorian snobbery, the courtship and the claw, right? Those are two things that, generally speaking, they don't go together, but they do for me. That's a Gail thing to put those things together. And supernatural society, the same kind of thing. The idea that we're dealing with high society, but with a supernatural element. And the supernatural society books, which are my queer books, are specifically called that because I'm dealing with the subversive nature of society. So I want to tackle characters in the supernatural society books that are supernatural partly because they are queer. And I'm exploring this dynamic of kind of uniqueness and artisan and being liminal to proper society and being both rejected by society and glorified it, that is often endemic in the history of queer culture. So that is why the supernatural society books are called that, because the supernatural element and the society element for me is saying many different things. And also those two things are me. They are very Parasol. Right. So I think we've tackled titles and series titles. And then Ty is asking the inevitable question, which is, does one self-publish one's books to get a readership and then go trad, or does one try to do trad books and then start self-publishing? So obviously I did the second. I'm traditionally published first for about 5 years before I started to reach out and self-publish my books. So that is what worked for me. If you're asking the question about what to do now, I honestly don't know. I keep an extremely close eye on what is going on in the commercial genre fiction industry. So things that I read in and am tangential to me as an author: romance, science fiction, and fantasy, even mystery, cozy mysteries to a certain extent. And there's a lot of flux right now. And there are still places where I feel like traditional publishing really does dominate, and it will give you the best platform if you can. One of those is young adult. So if you're writing a young adult book, I recommend querying agents first before deciding to self-publish yourself. Right now, at this moment in time, at the end of 2018, everything can change. But I feel like there are definitely genres and subgenres within commercial fiction that are much better suited to an independent path. And that just kind of is a matter of how niche you are in terms of subject matter. Now, the other part of that equation is your own personality as an author. If you're going to self-publish, you have to be good at marketing, or you have to develop that skill set. You have to learn how to present yourself. You have to learn how to do a whole other skill set that's not just writing. So it's a very complicated question when people come to me and say, okay, I've written this book, X book, whatever it is. Do I submit it to a traditional publishing house, or do I self-publish it? And I tend to like look at them and say, you know, if we're friends, let's sit down and have tea and have a whole discussion about this, because I need to know what kind of personality you are as an author. I mean, I have friends in traditional publishing who I've gone to and I've talked to, and I've said, you know, honey, you're a pretty big name author and you could publish your own novellas in, you know, your powerful, your great world, which is what I ended up doing. Why are you not doing that? And they've just turned to me and said, I don't have the personality for it. I don't want to do that part. I don't want to become a project manager of my own career. I don't want to have to pick out the cover art. I don't want to have to come up with the sales pitch and the blurb. And, you know, and they are in positions as traditionally published authors where they don't have to. So, more power to them. And they don't like it. I like it. I like it a lot. I love it, actually. I love coming up with taglines. I love coming up with copy. I love figuring out covers. I love picking the colors. I love finding the cover model. Like, I probably love that part too much. So there it is. It really is personality dependent. I think that is all. Okay, right. I think that's all of the pre-questions that I have, and we're almost 40 minutes in. Man, these lives, I'm telling you. I have a little extra time today, so maybe I'll bop over to the group and drop a live in there as well and see if there's any like quick ask me 10 questions in 10 minutes kind of things. But I'm sorry if you have asked a question prior to this exact moment in time. I haven't read it, so now would be the time when, if you have a question that you really want me to answer, I will be watching the comments at this juncture, and hopefully I'll be able to answer it for you. Try and keep the questions relatively short, please, because I can only read 3 lines at a time on Facebook. So here we go. Someone is saying I'm so organized. I am. I'm a Scotch OCD. Never diagnosed, but I'm really good at spreadsheets and I love them. I get a little excited about lists and checkboxes and spreadsheets. I get a lot excited. I think it's my my archaeologist in nature. There's a scientist buried in here, and she loves organization. Melissa would like to know if I'm signing books through Borderlands again for this book. Yes, indeed. So this book is going to be available for Borderlands. We've had to slow it a little bit, so there's a new so CreateSpace used to do all of my books and they closed recently, and so there's a different sort of shipping thing in place now, but fingers crossed Borderlands will have them within the next week or two, so you can get a signed edition. I will even dedicate it excuse me, I will even dedicate it for you. But it just might be a little delayed, I'm sorry, because I'm going off to TeslaCon, so if it comes in right when I leave, then it's going to have to wait until I fly back. But yes, absolutely, they will have signed editions for you. Amanda wants to know why I call the AB the AB. It's just an old moniker. So before the AB, there were others in my life, and I just I've given my various lovers over the years various sloganal nicknames. I refer to the AB as the AB partly for kind of privacy's sake. The people who have ended up sharing my life with me didn't necessarily sign up to be Gail Carriger's partner. And so I want to protect them in a way from any side effects or flack. They're not necessarily public. They don't necessarily want to be in the public eye. As you can tell, I also tend to not name genders for privacy as well, but also because I like to fight the assumption that my partner is any specific gender. So yeah, that's why. So the AB is just the AB. And I'm not gonna tell you what it means. Wahaha! It's my secret code. A book has noticed that I am wearing my turquoises to match the book cover. Yes, this necklace actually came from my grandmother. It's one of the few things of hers that I own. My British grandma. She wore it in the 20s, I think. So that's, you know, just a little historical thing. I had it shortened a little bit because I like a higher choker. Jocelyn says it takes a lot to order a signed edition from Borderlands if you live in Guam. And yeah, sorry about that. There's not a lot. I get this actually a lot with my Australian readers who are like, why is it always so much more expensive in Australia? And I have to say, you guys just don't have the printing facilities. Like, if there is anybody printing books in Australia, it's only 1 or 2 companies. And, like, everything is just expensive. It's a big old island down in the south. You gotta get the paper imported. Like, physical books are just so much more expensive in certain parts of the world because they have to be shipped there. And I just can't do anything about that. Like, shipping costs are set. Sorry. Ty wants to know what my Meyers Briggs is. This is hilarious because I'll take it at different times, and I'm actually a different setting, a different qualification. I don't know what that is. It's like me and which Harry Potter house am I? I tend to fall into every single one of them at some point or another, except for Hufflepuff. So with Meyers Briggs, I am INTJ most of the time, but occasionally I'm ENTJ because that I is like super light. Like I don't rank very like solid in any setting, if you believe in that stuff. But the only one I rank very highly in is the J. I'm very judgy, as it turns out. At least according to Meyers Briggs. Joelle wants to know, what do I do when I'm stuck in a chapter? So writer's block. If you Google Gail Carriger writer's block tips, I have a whole blog post where I talk about that. But one of my biggest tips is, generally speaking, I find myself getting unstuck when I am put in a situation where I absolutely cannot write. So if I take a shower, or go for a drive, or anywhere where suddenly I don't have access to my computer, and start thinking about the book, then suddenly the ideas will fly because, you know, I guess I'm just obstreperous like that, or my brain works that way. I'm a big proponent, actually, if you want a serious answer, of reading nonfiction that's tangential to your book. So if you're kind of stuck and you really want to write linearly and you don't want to jump ahead, I jump all the time. I almost never just stick to a solid line. I kind of know where my story is going, and if I'm being inspired to write a scene that's down the way, then I'll write that scene instead. Doesn't matter. I can write however I want to so long as I write. But if I'm linear and I really need to get to the end of something, then I'll tend to read kind of nonfiction. So I'll read Baedeker's that's set in the place that my characters are visiting in the Victorian era, something like that. If I'm writing science fiction, I'll pick up a Scientific America or read an article on science. So that's kind of that helps kickstart my imagination. Sevi says hi, coming back from Vegas. Man, I hope you guys had a good time. Christina wants to know if I'll be bringing copies of the Omega Objection to TeslaCon. I will not. It's a real bumper. I love TeslaCon very much, but one of the reasons I haven't been back very frequently, this is only my second time, is because it is really hard to get to from the Bay Area. It's not an easy flying. It's not a place apparently people in the Bay Area commonly go to. So it's going to be it's a brutal flight for me. I have to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And, yeah, so books, not easy to travel with, as it turns out, kind of heavy, little incommodious, so I tend to not travel with my books. So if you want me to sign this book at TeslaCon, you should probably order the print edition immediately, because then you would have it in time. Sally says she likes my eyes. Can I just tell you, I meant to bring it because I'm so excited about it, but I've got this stamp that you can do your cat eyes with now. It's called a Vamp Stamp. You just like dip in this little silicone shape and then go and stick it on, and like you don't have to worry about trying to get them the same evenness or anything. It's fantastic. It's revolutionizing my life. I'll tell you, I'll give you links. It's great. The Vamp Stamp, you guys. Woo! It's so good. I hate doing cat eyes. They're such a pain in the ass. Robert wants to know if it's more financially beneficial for me to write novellas because of the short turnaround time. That's a really interesting question. It is, okay. From a purely like numbers game in terms of knowing how effective something is, it is really nice because the other thing about the novellas, of course, is that I control all of the data. So it's not filtered through a third party. Not that, let's be clear, traditional publishers are pretty opaque about like how many books you sell and when you sold them and all that sort of data. Whereas when I do a novella, within 2 or 3 months, I pretty much know like how many I sold, who bought them, what the distribution was, all that kind of thing, which is super interesting stuff to a data-driven girl like myself. So that is, and in terms of money, like I do outlay quite a bit. So the downside of a novella or a self-published book for me is it does cost quite a bit because I pay for a developmental editor. That's quite expensive. I pay for a copy editor, also quite expensive. And I usually pay for a proof editor as well. That's thousands of dollars, thousands and thousands of dollars. And then there's cover art and the model and all the other stuff that I talked about at the beginning of the live. So there's a lot of initial outlay for one of the novellas or for one of the San Andreas books. So though I have to recoup that. And then of course if I'm going to do an audiobook, an audiobook costs at least $3,000 just off the bat. Right? So that's a lot of money that the book has to make back. So it's a good thing that I do like start to make the money back after it comes out within a couple of months. Otherwise I'd be operating constantly in the red. So in terms of fiscal, like I haven't crunched the numbers, but my guess is that it probably works out about the same, at least right now. And right now in terms of what I get as an advance from my traditional publisher, because that is a flexible thing. Like if my books don't sell that well, then they'll lower my next advance. If they sell well, they'll raise it. And some of the novellas sell way better than the others too. And it's really hard for me to figure out why, because each novella is a completely different book. So you can't compare apples to oranges. You can't say, well, I think that one sold better because it's, queer, or I think that one sold better because it's got a pink cover, because the one that has the pink cover has all of these other differences. So like the variables are impossible to control. Not to be scientific, but the scientist in me is like, why can't I, like, I just want to put one book out with like 6 different covers, figure out like, which one do people like the best? So it's also hard to predict in terms of like, but I do know at this juncture with the novellas, for example, that I am gonna make my money back within about 3 months. I'll at least make my money back and start to turn a profit. Or, to be completely honest with you guys, I wouldn't write them. I mean, I would write them, but I wouldn't like be as excited about putting them to publication. I can't stop writing. That's never gonna happen. But I am a professional writer because you guys buy my books and read them. I have other careers I would love to do that are not being a professional writer. So if you stop buying them, then I will slow writing. Like I'm a fast writer because I love it and because it's my living. But if I were, to be an archaeologist again, for example, then I wouldn't write as much. Yeah. Not likely to happen after 10 years though, to be fair. So don't worry. So that was a sort of circuitous answer to that question, Robert. I hope I got it right. If I didn't, then you can ask again in different language and maybe I'll be better at it. Debbie wants to know if I have to say in who reads my books for Audible. So it depends. For my traditional book series, the first series, the Parasol Protectorate, is read by Emily Gray, and she was chosen for me by Recorded Books. I didn't have a choice. but I like her very much. But she did mispronounce stuff, and I did have to go in and have a conversation with the audiobook producer to tell her to pronounce like Lord Akaldama's name differently. Stuff like that. So that was, and then for the finishing school series, they involved me in the choice of narrator. So I had 3 different narrators to pick from. And I liked Moira Quirk the best for the finishing school series. And fortunately, everybody else agreed with me. So it was a unanimous vote in her favor. And then when they chose her to be the reader, she reads the finishing school. She also reads the Custard Protocol. They didn't ask me because I'd already approved her. I love her, but I probably would have asked for a different narrator because I just like having a different narrator for each of my books. But, I mean, she does a great job, so I don't care that much. But it's just personal preference. So you can see with my independent books and with my my self-published stuff that I choose different narrators for the different books by design. So there's a reason Susan reads one, there's a reason Emma reads another one, there's a reason Pete reads another one. So, like, you know, I come out of audiobooks. I used to listen to them as a kid. I didn't have television, but I listened to books on tape pretty voraciously as a kid. While I drew. That was one of my childhood, earliest childhood memories, is listening to Paddington Bear on tape and drawing. So I'm very motivated by audio readership, and it very much interests me, and I'm very interested in having a say in it. So I'm definitely pretty meticulous about it, especially as it costs so much when I'm doing my own audiobooks. And I am thinking about whether the narrator can do the right accents, whether they have the right tone for the main character, stuff like that. And sometimes I'll ask the group. So for How to Marry a Werewolf, I was, so this is an American main character, but like half of the POV is Channing's POV, and he's British, obviously. And so I was torn about whether to have a British narrator or an American narrator, and I didn't want to do 2 narrators. I don't like that, personally. So I actually threw up a quiz in the Parasol Protectorate Facebook group. I basically was like, okay, you guys just vote. What would you rather listen to? And it was pretty unanimously in favor of listening to a British person doing an American accent rather than vice versa. So that's what I went with. Katie is talking about shortening things. Kim wants to know how I pronounce Xavier, and I pronounce Xavier, Xavier. I don't know if that's right, but that's how I learned to pronounce it. Sorry, I'm scrolling through your questions at the moment, so a little pause while Gail reads. Everybody drink your tea up. Maria wants to know if the Enforcer Enigma, which is the 3rd book in San Andreas, is the last one. And wants to know what happened to Kevin. Yes, you learned about Kevin. That's absolutely, it is exactly who you think it is, the Enforcer Enigma, for the last San Andreas Shifter book. So, and I keep saying last, but that's because I'm thinking of them as a trilogy. In this particular series, I'm absolutely not ruling out writing more. For example, somebody mentioned the Dratzi, which is another kind of shifter, and that inspired me to like come up with another storyline. I introduced the 2 SBI characters in the Omega Objection, and I really love them. I'd love to explore their like stories a little bit. So I'm not capping it. Like, it's not necessarily gonna be an actual trilogy. But right now, the Enforcer Enigma is the one like I'm going to be writing next for that series. So that's why I keep calling it the last one. So don't feel like it's the last. If you really love this series, I'll probably keep writing it. Katie is speculating on my D&D character. In case you care, I always test as like a ranger, or I've never played D&D, but I'm usually something like really ridiculous, like lawful neutral. I'm very rule abiding, but I'm not particularly moral. So I'm never a paladin or anything like that. Everybody is supporting INTJ, the Vamp Stamp. This is all very exciting. Book is asking questions about long old series, which I can't remember why I did things. You have to ask things immediately of me or my brain completely forgets. Everybody's excited about the Vamp Stamp. You should be excited about the Vamp Stamp. It's amazing. Dita wants to know if I've ever done a makeup tutorial for my blog, Facebook, or YouTube. I haven't. There's one on the Retro Rack. If you Google Retro Rack makeup tutorial, maybe, it'll come up, and it's just photographs. But I don't consider myself very good at makeup, so I don't like the way I look without makeup. So that's why I've never done a tutorial, because you have to start with no face on at all, and then, oh, you guys would know what I look like all naked. It's terrible. Naomi wants to know if there'll be more Supernatural Society books. I believe so. I don't have anybody planned at the moment, but somebody started noodling. There was a character that started noodling at the back of my head, and I'm pretty sure it's a Supernatural Society character. So that character will eventually like come to the fore and say and claim their time in the limelight. So yes. Lily wants to know if I can pronounce Madame LeFou's first name. Oh, Genevieve. I don't know how it is pronounced actually in French, because I don't speak French. So, sorry. Dita wants to know if my books with blue covers sell better, and do my green covered books sell worse? There used to be an old prevailing theory in the book industry that green covered books didn't sell well. It's a complete misnomer, but it still sticks around. Like, occasionally you'll find some old guard who's still like, yeah, we can't have a green book cover because they don't sell. Ridiculous. Robert wants to know what's my biggest market outside of the US for traditional and self-publishing. It is pretty much the same, actually. So my biggest market outside of the United States is other English reading, is the UK, basically. Surprise, shocker there. If you mean outside of, like, non-English speaking countries, then it is Germany, France, Japan. In that order. Now, that is in sales, not necessarily numbers, just because that's the information I have access to. So I might actually sell more in some countries, but the books themselves are priced less. But all I have is the end results of how much I'm earning in the different territories, so that's the way it goes. Ty says, so Percy's book is going to be narrated by Moira. Yes, which will be interesting. But Percy's book is a dual POV book, and it's pretty even between the two characters, and the second character is a female character. So, yeah, so I think it's going to be Moira. I can't imagine they're going to bother to switch. This is the thing, is like once they have it set in motion and they know the way it happens, traditional does kind of get set in its ways, and they like Moira. She's easy to work with. She's right in LA. She's comfortable with the subject matter. She's done my books before. She has the existing voices down for the different characters, so they're not going to mess with a good thing, I don't think. So I'm imagining that Reticence will also be narrated by Moira. Which is my, oh, Anne wants to know the inevitable question, which is my favorite character that I have written. And that is just, it honestly is like trying to pick between your children. As a general rule, my favorite character is the character that I've just finished with. So Percy is very dear to my heart right now because I just finished writing his book. So that's always exciting. But, I mean, there are certainly characters that you can tell I have great affection for them, and they're very easy to write. That's usually why I like them. So, Lord Akaldama is one of those. He comes on screen, so to speak, and he just is really easy for me to write. Ivy is another one. just kind of a joy and a fun to be that absurd and that insane. And then there are definitely characters that generally my main characters I identify with very heavily. So Sophronia and Alexia. Madame LeFou is another one who I very much identify with, so I enjoy writing her because of that. But I don't think, I mean, I love Biffy and Lyle. Obviously I love a beta male character, so Tank, who's the, one of the love interests, he's the main love interest in this book, is, like, I'm a huge fan of his. Because nothing makes me happier than a great big guy who's just a big old softie. Like, and it's so much fun to write. Like, I love kind of quietly efficient, capable men. It's just a passion of mine, shall we say. So I write them a lot, and yeah, I like bossy women and quietly capable men. So kind of my my whole, I don't know, my whole identity as an author. I do put an aggressive alpha, and boy do I like a snarky character too. So the Fifth Gender, which is my next book that's going to come out, has just the sweetest, most chipper, most snarky alien character. So I think you guys will like him a lot. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously things that I gravitate towards as an author that are kind of reoccurring archetypes, for lack of a better word. It looks like someone's having a conversation that's not within the comments, that's nothing to do with me, about British accents, and that's fine. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by what type of British accents. If you're asking me if I have a preference in British accent, then as a general rule, I gravitate towards a Londoner, and not an East End, like a middle-class Londoner, kind of BBC, what you call a BBC accent. Not necessarily an Eton accent, but a BBC accent. And that's just because that's what I grew up with. That's what my mom's voice is like. She doesn't have much colloquialism at all. Now, my grandparents lived in Devon, so the Devonshire accent, like that roundness in the brogue, I'm comfortable with. And I've traveled enough and lived in enough different parts of England up in the north and stuff to, like, be able to distinguish accents and also enjoy and be able to know what people are saying more than most Americans do. But the type of English accent that's sort of most comfortable for my ear is the performance accent, is the BBC accent, which kind of has no accent at all, really. Dick wants to know if SAS novellas would be an option. That's very interesting. Would I write novellas in this world? Sure. That would be really fun. These are the length they are because that's kind of the way they're coming out. They're coming out as full books. But I'm not against writing something shorter. I think that would be really fun. I really love the novella length. It's just, it's a joy to write, for me as an author. I know it's too short for you. Most of my readers are like, these are too short. I'm like, I like that length. Although you'll be happy to know that Reticence is longer than usual. So rather like Timeless was, I almost never write over 100,000 words. That's like, whew, that's long for me. And Reticence is over 100K. So, dun dun dun, you guys have something really meaty to get stuck into summer of next year with the last Custer Protocol book. Anne would like to know if Xavier is a French character. So Xavier is a character in this series, and no, he's Filipino. So yeah. I have, my pronunciation of Genevieve has been approved by Joelle, so thank you very much. I'm probably not pronouncing your name correctly, but I am a reader, so my pronunciation of things in general is always open to question. So who is asking this question? Natalie wants to know if I will do short stories. I don't consider, so I have a few short stories, but I actually do not think of myself as a short story writer at all. I don't think it's my skill set. A novelette is more comfortable. So novelette is between a short story and, so about 10,000 words, 8 to 10,000 words. That's just, And it's not that I don't like short stories. I actually think a good short story is sort of the pinnacle of prose. I think it is the highest achievement that an author can make, is to write a good short story. Because to get a profound emotional resonance from something that brief requires true spectacular talent. So I like to read short stories and I'll listen to short stories, but I just don't think I have that talent. I could develop it and I could work on it. But yeah, I think, Natalie, what you're seeing actually is a lot of traditionally published authors who are writing short stories. So there are a lot of authors who are trad by nature and inclination will write short stories for their newsletter, or they'll write them for anthologies. That is quite common, actually. And it's also a way to write something that you don't have to give to your publisher, because short stories fall outside of contract for almost all authors. So for the business side, that's why there's short stories around. But I actually am not, I mean, I write them occasionally, but they do tend to run longer. And like I said, I just don't think it's my best authorial ability. Somebody wants to touch the fuzzy thing behind me. This fuzzy thing, it's a sheepskin. Robert wants to know if I've ever traveled to Japan. I have not. It is definitely on my bucket list, though. I would love to go sometime. Kamira is saying it's difficult to get my books in the Philippines. I'm sorry. I honestly do. The independent stuff especially, I have it distributed as widely as I possibly can. It's on every vendor I can get it into, and I have it to every territory that I can. I never restrict them. So I'm doing my best, but yeah, the Philippines are really, really challenging to get to. And again, it's just the shipping thing, I'm assuming. Emma says, I've never tried an audiobook before, so what would I recommend in my catalog? Oh my gosh. Wow, that's really hard. So Emma Newman reads Romancing the Inventor, and I would say that's probably one of my favorites of my audiobooks. I think she does a great job. Because it's a lower, she's British and she's doing French lower class and upper class English, and well, not French English, but you know what I mean, French accent. And I think she just does a really spectacular job. And it's also one of the novellas, so, you know, if you don't like it and you're not into it, then you're not committed to listening to a really long series. So if you're going to start with any of my audiobooks, I would say Romancing the Inventor would be my recommendation. All right, and then we're going to close out comments because we're actually running a little long. This is what happens when I do this earlier on in the day. I'm much more awake and like peppy. Usually, for those of you who don't know, these lives happen at like tea time, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't get tipsy because I was talking too much. Someday I'll do a live where it's me in conversation with somebody else, and then I'll be able to pause and drink my booze more frequently. Lisa wants to know what the 5th gender thing is. Are you writing it? It's not up on Goodreads yet. So this is one of those things that I keep leaking to the Cheer Up. I don't have a cover for it or anything, or a description or anything. So I'm not ready to like post it or really like kind of get you all started. And it won't be until, it won't be for a couple more months. But yeah, it's very, very exciting. I have a lavender alien with tentacle hair who's outrageous and fabulous. And a security chief who's big and gruff, a big gruff softie. And it's going to be really fun. I explore an alien race that has 5 different genders in that book. It's part of the Tinkered Stars, so it's the same universe as Crudrat, but it's going to be under the GL because it has some steamy sex scenes in it. So, yeah. If you like the San Andreas Shifter stuff, you will definitely like the 5th gender. And if you're interested in watching me play with sci-fi, then you're gonna. 5th gender is it. Like, it's gonna be just ridiculous and fun. So that's the next one that's on my roster. But yeah, I was busy birthing this one into the world, so I haven't really had time to think about what's coming up next. You know how these cycles go. Yeah, so I think I'm sorry if I missed your question, guys. You know how it goes. You can always hit me up on the Twitters or over in the fan group if you wanna make sure your question gets answered. Ladies, guys, gentlemen, queer folk everywhere, gender neutral terms of choice, gentle people, darlings, my preferred one. It has been wonderful talking to you. And yes, next up is gonna be the 5th Gender. That's in the spring of 2019. Then we are going to have Reticence. Reticence is the last book in the Custard Protocol series. It's Percys' book. It's ridiculous. And it is longer than usual. It's gonna be in the summer of 2019. And then I haven't yet figured out what my fall release will be, but you know you're gonna get something. And there is a very super special collector's book coming out in October of 2019 because it is Solis's 10th birthday. So it is my 10th anniversary as an author next October. So Subterranean and I are cooking up something super, super special for you guys. So you got a lot coming from me next year. And I look forward to seeing some of you at TeslaCon. And meanwhile, I hope you like this one. I hope you like Tank and Isaac. I think they're adorable. And I will talk to you next live. Bye.